I'm going to ask you the same question. You've been working with the chakras as well. Why is it important to you?
Well, it's interesting, Nicola, because I'm sort of coming at it from another angle, I suppose, really, because what's happened to me, when I developed the meridian scanning, and particularly the vibrational level scans, especially when I started to get on the higher levels of really tuning into the spiritual aspects, what I noticed was, quite often the meridians weren't the things that seemed to be most dominant in their energetic field. And I started to realise that what I was feeling had to be the chakras. It had to be, because I kept finding them, where the traditional chakras were. So then what I started to do, I sort of came from the other end from you, because rather than coming from the cosmic end sort of thing, going down, and, what I did was I actually came from the meridians out into the spiritual level. And my particular interest, actually, is how the chakras really, what they actually are. And this sort of comes really with my work with James Oshman's material and Mei Wan Ho and the whole biophysics thing. Because what I suspect is, because the chakras, are orientated with nerve plexus. Nerve plexus is related to each chakra. We now know that the connective tissue is like an analog system for sensing energetic fields. That analog information is translated through the nervous system and then it becomes cognitive. What I suspect is that the chakras are like kind of gateways between the field experience of the connective tissue and the nervous system. And I see them as almost like gates. And what's happened, I think, through the ages is that they've been ascribed metaphorical meanings that relate to the development of life, from the physical to the spiritual. And I think that really resonates with the way the new biophysics is kind of moving towards a more convincing explanation of life, really, the whole aspects of life, including the spiritual aspects. So that's how I found them. I found them through Shiatsu. When it comes to working them, I'm more interested in working in the body, in the actual boundaries of the body. And what I've been doing is I've been mapping blockages in the connective tissue that start to occur when there's long-term chakra imbalances, and that's when you get, really, when it starts to manifest on the physical level. To do that, what I've had to do is really work at the edge of the techniques that I've developed in order to be able to get into the energetic field, get into the body, but work at a high enough vibrational level to be able to kind of adjust the interface between the connective tissue and the nervous system. And that's really how I understand what I'm doing so far, anyway. So, first thing I noticed is that when I do a whole body scan, sometimes I find that one or more of the chakras will come out as dominant in the energetic field. And what I've done now is I've developed a technique where I test the relationship of the diagnostic meridians with whichever chakra it is that I want to work on. So, for example, let's work on Nicola's heart chakra, and let's see what happens when we try and tie up the Shiatsu meridians with the chakra. Okay, so I'm going to do a higher diagnosis now, a normal higher diagnosis. Okay, and I've got liver jitsu and bladder kyo. So now what I'm interested in now is how will those meridians affect Nicola's heart chakra. And the way I'm going to find out is I'm going to test. I've got the Shiatsu reaction, so I know they're the diagnostic meridians. So now I'm interested to find out what's going to happen to our heart chakra energy when I work the liver and the bladder meridians. So let's find out. Place my hand over her heart chakra, or maybe slightly away, just to get a feeling for the connective tissue and the energy in this area. And then what I do is I test and see what happens. Okay, so first of all I'm going to go into the liver, and then I'm going to go into bladder. Okay, and I can feel two very different things happening. When I go into the liver meridian, I can feel her energy condensing here and going into the front of the body. When I go into the bladder and test the bladder, I can feel her energy going back, right back into where the heart chakra emerges in the back, in the thoracic, around the thoracic spine. So how do I use that information? Well, as I go around through my regular treatment, I'll be monitoring the effects of those meridians on the chakra. So for example, I could be working, say, the liver meridian, the leg, and I could see how that affects the heart chakra. And of course I could use classical points and do all the regular things that we do normally in a Shiatsu technique. I could work the kidney meridian. And again, what I'm feeling here is just as I found out when I did the initial assessment, working the kidney and the bladder meridian is creating a movement of energy that's stabilising the chakra more into her back. And that's just an example of how I work on an everyday basis with linking the meridian system with the chakras.